My dear brothers and sisters, today we speak about one of the most dangerous poisons that has quietly spread through our world, a poison that destroys societies, families, and even the very soul of a believer. It is something so destructive that it eats away not only at our wealth, but at our faith, our connection with Allah, and our sense of compassion. That poison is riba, or interest and usury. When we talk about sins, we often think of lying, stealing, or backbiting. But riba is not just another sin. It is a system that corrupts the heart, enslaves the poor, and replaces mercy with greed. It takes the beauty of giving and turns it into the ugliness of taking more than one deserves. And the greatest tragedy is that many people today live within it, defend it, and even see it as something normal. But what is normal in society is not necessarily accepted by Allah. Riba destroys faith because it turns a heart of compassion into a heart of calculation. Instead of helping others for the sake of Allah, a person begins to see every opportunity as a way to gain more for themselves. A believer who once gave in charity now asks, "What's in it for me?" The purity of intention fades away, and that's where the faith begins to die. Not all at once, but slowly, quietly, and dangerously. Imagine a society where people lend not to help, but to profit from someone's need. A young man wants to get married but has no money. He goes to the bank and takes a loan with interest. Now he begins his married life already in debt, already in fear. A woman wants to build a home for her family. She takes a loan and signs an agreement she barely understands, not realizing she has entered into a system that thrives on her struggle. The more she pays, the more she owes. What kind of peace can grow in a heart chained by such a system? Riba creates a world where compassion becomes a transaction, where helping others becomes a business, and where every debt becomes a burden that crushes the soul. It's not just about money, it's about what money does to our hearts. When greed becomes normal, generosity becomes rare. When profit becomes the only goal, purity of faith becomes weak. Riba destroys trust between people. It divides the rich and the poor. It creates arrogance in those who have and humiliation in those who have not. Instead of gratitude, there is pride. Instead of empathy, there is exploitation. And that is exactly what the system of riba does. It replaces mercy with manipulation and faith with fear. The believer is supposed to live with the belief that everything belongs to Allah. Wealth is a trust, not a trophy. It is something we are tested with, not something we own in pride. But when riba enters our lives, that belief fades. People begin to think, "I earned this, I deserve this, and I will take more because I can." That mindset destroys the concept of accountability before Allah. It blinds a person from seeing that true success is not in the numbers in your account, but in the peace in your heart. When a believer gets involved in riba, it begins to darken their spiritual heart. Their prayers lose meaning, their charity loses sincerity, and their trust in Allah weakens. They begin to rely more on financial institutions than on their Creator. They begin to think that their future is secured by contracts, not by qadar. But no matter how much wealth a person gains through riba, that wealth is not blessed. It brings anxiety instead of peace, and it robs sleep instead of bringing comfort. And if you look at our world today, you will see how deeply this disease has infected our lives. Entire nations are drowning in debt. People work day and night, but never find satisfaction. There is abundance of money, but scarcity of peace. The rich grow richer, the poor grow poorer, and justice becomes a privilege only for those who can afford it. This is what happens when humanity replaces divine guidance with human greed. Brothers and sisters, faith and riba cannot coexist in the same heart. One will eventually drive out the other. You cannot claim to trust Allah fully while also engaging in a system that defies His command. You cannot say, "I believe in divine mercy," while profiting from another person's hardship. A believer's heart should soften when they see someone in need, not calculate how much interest can be earned from their struggle. When riba spreads, it doesn't just destroy individual faith, it destroys entire communities. Marriages break apart because of debt. Families fight over loans. Friendships end over money. Mental health collapses under the pressure of repayment. And society loses the beauty of simplicity, the sweetness of gratitude, and the purity of trust in Allah's provision. But even in this darkness, there is hope. Allah is most merciful. He gives us chances to return, to repent, and to rebuild our lives on honesty and faith. The believer must have the courage to step away from what Allah has forbidden, even if it seems difficult, because the moment you give up something for the sake of Allah, He replaces it with something far better: peace, contentment, and blessings you could never buy with wealth. If you have ever been involved in riba, don't despair, don't lose hope. Turn to Allah sincerely, seek forgiveness, and take steps to remove yourself from that system. It may take time, it may require sacrifice, but remember, every step away from sin is a step closer to Jannah. And every time you say no to riba, you are saying yes to faith, yes to mercy, yes to Allah. We need to revive the spirit of giving without expecting return. We need to bring back the beauty of helping others just for the sake of Allah. When your brother is in need, help him. When your sister is struggling, support her. Give from your heart, not from a place of profit. That is how we rebuild a community of believers, by returning to mercy, by returning to justice, and by returning to Allah. Faith is not measured by how much we have, but by how much we trust. When you believe that your sustenance comes only from Allah, you will never need to seek it through forbidden means. When you know that your future is written by the one who controls the universe, you will not sell your soul for temporary comfort. The Prophet, peace be upon him, warned us about a time when people would not care where their wealth came from, whether from halal or haram, and we are living in that time. But even now, you can choose differently. You can stand apart. You can be among those who say, I will not trade my faith for wealth. I will not trade my peace for profit. I will not destroy my heart for the sake of numbers. Riba destroys the faith of a believer because it replaces tawakkul, trust in Allah, with dependence on the world. It replaces contentment with greed. It replaces mercy with cruelty. It replaces the love of Allah with the love of wealth. But the believer knows that no amount of money can buy peace, and no worldly gain can replace the sweetness of faith. Brothers and sisters, let us purify our earnings, our homes, and our hearts. Let us teach our children that wealth without blessing is not success. Let us remind each other that every coin earned through forbidden means is a burden on the day of judgment. Let us rebuild our lives on the foundation of honesty, fairness, and trust in Allah's mercy. When you leave riba, you don't lose, you win. You win back your peace, your dignity, and your closeness to Allah. And that is worth more than all the riches of this world. So today, make a promise yourself, your family, and your Lord, that you will no longer support a system that destroys souls. Promise that you will live with integrity, that you will seek only what is pure, and that you will spend in ways that please Allah. Because faith is the real wealth, and every believer who protects it is richer than the one who owns the world. Riba is not only a financial wrongdoing, it is a deep spiritual disease that spreads silently within the heart and soul. It takes something pure and turns it into something polluted. It takes what should be an act of mercy and transforms it into an act of selfishness. When a person begins to engage in riba, they might think it's only about numbers, percentages, and contracts, but in reality, it's about what happens inside the heart. The moment a believer begins to depend on interest-based systems instead of trusting Allah, a shift begins inside. The calmness that comes with faith starts to fade, and it is replaced with anxiety, fear, and greed. The person begins to calculate life only in material terms, forgetting that every blessing comes from the one who provides, not from the systems of this world. Riba is a spiritual trap because it looks harmless at first. It appears as an easy solution, a way to get ahead, a shortcut to comfort. But behind that appearance lies a great deception. It changes the way a person thinks and feels. Instead of seeing wealth as a tool to serve others, it becomes a weapon to control them. Instead of seeing business as a form of cooperation, it becomes competition driven by ego. Instead of asking, how can I help? A person begins to ask, how can I gain more? That mindset slowly replaces the light of sincerity with the darkness of selfishness. Riba is like a poison that enters the bloodstream of a community. It spreads quietly, but affects everything. The relationships between people change, trust disappears, compassion becomes rare. When a poor person borrows from someone who charges interest, that borrower doesn't just carry debt, they carry humiliation, fear, and loss of hope. The lender, instead of feeling empathy, begins to feel superiority. This exchange doesn't just damage wealth, it damages humanity. And when this happens on a large scale, it destroys entire societies. When we study the deeper meaning of faith, we realize that belief is not only about prayer and fasting, it's about the way we deal with others. It's about our sense of justice, mercy, and honesty. Riba destroys all three. It replaces fairness with exploitation, kindness with calculation, and honesty with manipulation. When believers allow riba to become part of their lives, their worship loses depth because their hearts are no longer pure. Their prayers may still be performed, but their hearts feel distant. Their charity may still be given, but the sincerity fades. Their gratitude becomes shallow because they depend more on worldly systems than on the mercy of Allah. Every time a person chooses riba over compassion, they are making a spiritual decision. It may seem like a business deal, but it's really a test of the soul. It's a moment where faith is weighed against greed, where trust in Allah is tested against trust in the world. And every time riba is chosen, the light of faith dims a little more. That light, the one that brings peace in the night, comfort in hardship, and purpose in life, begins to weaken. The person begins to feel empty inside. No matter how much wealth they have, they may gain numbers in their account, but they lose peace in their heart. The illusion of success that comes with riba is dangerous. It looks like prosperity but brings destruction. It appears as progress but leads to spiritual decline. A person might buy houses, cars, and luxuries, but deep down they carry unease. There's a hidden restlessness that never leaves them, a constant worry about losing what they have gained. That's the nature of riba. It gives you temporary satisfaction, but takes away lasting peace. It blinds the heart from the sweetness of contentment and the beauty of simplicity. True believers must rise above this illusion. They must look beyond the glitter of material gain and see the reality of what riba does to the soul. They must remember that success is not measured by wealth, but by integrity. They must remind themselves that the pleasure of Allah is worth more than all the profits in the world. When a believer gives up something forbidden for the sake of Allah, they are not losing, they are being elevated. Every sacrifice made to avoid riba is rewarded with peace, clarity, and blessings that cannot be measured in numbers. The purity of giving is what defines a true believer. When you help someone without expecting more in return, that act shines like a light in the sight of Allah. It brings barakah, tranquility, and love into your life. That's the opposite of riba. While riba drains the heart, pure giving revives it. When you lend to someone with kindness, when you support without profit, when you give for the sake of Allah alone, your wealth becomes a source of blessing. Your home feels lighter, your prayers feel deeper, and your heart feels alive again. It takes courage to resist riba, especially in a world where it has become normal. But faith was never meant to blend in with what's normal. It was meant to stand firm for what's right. Believers must remember that their strength lies not in their possessions, but in their principles. When you choose faith over financial temptation, you are proving your loyalty to Allah. You are saying, "My trust is in you, not in this world." That statement, even if silent, is a powerful act of worship. The world may try to convince you that riba is necessary, that it's the only way to move forward, that you cannot survive without it. But history and experience show that everything built on disobedience collapses eventually. Wealth earned through riba does not last. It brings no barakah. It grows outwardly, but shrinks spiritually. On the other hand, wealth earned honestly, even if small, brings peace, joy, and true richness. To rise above riba is to reclaim your heart. It's to say no to greed and yes to grace. To choose generosity over gain, compassion over control, and faith over fear. It's to live with the certainty that Allah's provision is enough, that His mercy is sufficient, and that His reward is eternal. A believer's goal is not to accumulate what will vanish, but to build what will remain forever. So protect your heart from the trap of riba. Guard your faith like a treasure. Fill your life with acts of kindness that expect nothing in return. Give because you love, not because you want. Help because you care, not because you calculate. When you live that way, you will find a peace that no system, no interest, and no wealth can ever give. And in that moment, you will realize that real success was never about how much you earn, but how much you trust the one who provides. That trust is the essence of faith, and that faith is what riba tries to destroy. But as long as you choose to keep your heart connected to Allah, no system, no greed, and no worldly temptation can ever take that away. Faith and riba cannot live together in the same heart because they are opposites in nature. One grows light while the other spreads darkness. Faith teaches a person to rely completely on Allah, to live with humility, to share with others, to trust that whatever Allah gives is enough. But riba feeds arrogance, greed, and fear of loss. It teaches a person to depend on worldly numbers instead of divine mercy, to seek more even when they already have enough, and to measure success only in material terms. When faith fills the heart, it brings calmness and certainty. When riba enters, it brings restlessness and pride. These two forces cannot coexist, because one purifies while the other poisons. A believer's heart is supposed to be a place of peace, a space where love, sincerity, and gratitude live. But when riba touches that heart, it begins to harden. It becomes filled with desires that never end. The person begins to believe that money defines worth, that power defines importance, that security comes only through possession. The beautiful feeling of trusting Allah fades, replaced by anxiety about earnings and fear about losing wealth. The believer who once felt content with little now feels incomplete even with plenty. That is how riba slowly destroys the spirit. It doesn't break the heart at once. It drains it slowly, taking away its softness and replacing it with pride. When someone engages in riba, they begin to see money as the answer to every problem. Instead of turning to prayer, they turn to profit. Instead of making dua for barakah, they calculate interest. The balance of faith is lost. What used to be about patience becomes about impatience. What used to be about gratitude becomes about greed. Such a person may still pray and give charity, but the sweetness of those acts fades. The connection with Allah feels distant because their wealth, their sustenance, and their lifestyle are no longer pure. The soul knows when it is feeding on something impure, and that inner discomfort is a reminder that no worldly gain can replace divine peace. The arrogance that comes from riba is subtle. It begins with thoughts like, I earned this through my effort, or I deserve more because I worked harder. But true believers know that every breath, every opportunity, every success is only from Allah. When this humility disappears, faith begins to weaken. Wealth becomes a source of pride rather than a tool for service. Instead of helping others rise, a person begins to see them as opportunities for gain. The heart that was once gentle now calculates how to profit from another's need. This is not the heart of a believer, it is the heart of someone who has allowed greed to take control. To protect your faith, you must guard your earnings, your intentions, and your dealings. Your income is not just a financial matter, it is a spiritual matter. Every coin you earn either brings blessings or brings burden. When wealth is earned through pure means, it nourishes your soul, brings tranquility to your home, and strengthens your prayers. But when wealth comes from riba or dishonesty, it carries darkness with it. You may enjoy its material comfort for a while, but it will never bring you peace. It will cause arguments in your family, dissatisfaction in your heart, and anxiety in your mind. That's why purifying your earnings is not just about obeying rules, it's about protecting your faith from erosion. Purity of intention is equally important. A believer does not just avoid sin outwardly, they also guard their inner motives. When you do business, give charity, or help someone, ask yourself why you are doing it. Is it for Allah's pleasure or personal gain? When the heart becomes used to sincerity, the presence of Allah feels close. But when riba and greed enter, sincerity fades, and good deeds lose their soul. A small amount of wealth earned with honesty and faith brings far more peace than a mountain of wealth earned through riba. Leaving what Allah has forbidden requires courage and trust. The world might tell you that you will fall behind, that you will lose opportunities, that you cannot survive without interest-based systems. But those are whispers meant to weaken your resolve. Every time a believer leaves something forbidden for the sake of Allah, that believer is not losing. They are being honored. What seems like sacrifice is actually elevation. What seems like loss is protection. Allah replaces what is left for His sake with something far better, something that brings real happiness, real satisfaction, and real stability. When you step away from riba, you step toward divine mercy. Your heart becomes lighter. Your prayers become deep. You begin to notice blessings in places you never noticed before. You may have less in numbers, but you feel richer in spirit. That is the secret of barakah. It multiplies meaning, not just money. It makes every little thing you own enough, and every moment you live full of gratitude. The peace that comes from obeying Allah cannot be purchased. It cannot be measured. It cannot be compared to any worldly pleasure. It is a kind of peace that sits quietly in the heart and gives you strength even in hardship. It is the feeling of sleeping peacefully because you know your wealth is clean. It is the joy of giving without guilt. It is the comfort of knowing that your sustenance is pure, and your trust is in the one who never fails. Many people chase wealth their entire lives and never find peace. They build bigger houses but smaller hearts. They gain followers but lose family. They earn money but lose meaning. But the believer who chooses purity over profit finds peace even in simplicity. They may not have the biggest house, but their home is filled with love. They may not have the largest bank account, but their heart is full of gratitude. They may not have everything the world calls success, but they have what matters most, the pleasure of Allah. When you choose to purify your earnings and leave what is forbidden, you are choosing freedom. You are freeing yourself from the chains of greed, from the anxiety of debt, from the guilt of sin. You are choosing to live a life of honesty, peace, and trust. That kind of life is richer than any wealth built on Riba. It brings blessings that money cannot buy: contentment, respect, love, and the light of faith that never fades. The believer who turns away from Riba stands tall in front of Allah, knowing they chose faith over temptation. They refused to let their heart be polluted by what the world offers. They chose to walk a harder path because they trusted that it leads to eternal peace. And Allah, who sees every sacrifice, rewards them with what no amount of money can ever provide: His mercy, His forgiveness, and His everlasting paradise. That is the true meaning of success: to live in a way that pleases Allah, to earn from what is pure, to give from what is blessed, and to die with a heart clean from the stain of Riba. In that purity lies the beauty of faith, the strength of character, and the peace that this world can never take away.